Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here addressing you today on the subject of the future of accreditation. And I'm taking as my theme here actually the fact that we thought about this in EFMD some time ago and wanted to prepare ourselves for whatever the future might bring. And the result, the current result of our deliberations was to, sorry, I'm on the, it's putting itself forward automatically. The current result of our deliberations has been an accreditation or a certification product called EOCCS, the EFMD Global Network Online Course Certification System. Now, of course, this isn't the future of all of accreditation, but what I want to do with you this morning is to share some of the learning that we have done in running our online certification across the world, mainly in Europe, but we have reached into India, we've reached into South America, we're still growing. What I want to do is share some of the lessons, and there have been, say, 3 areas that I want to talk about this morning. First of all, for those who are not familiar, well, let me just take a show of hands. If I say, you know, you see on the screen there the EOCCS logo, is anyone in the online community aware of EOCCS? Oh, I see 1 or 2. We're not doing our marketing job very well, are we? But in the online community, we're there with online educators as part of our team, really trying to set the global standard for online management education. And the 3 things I want to do is to introduce to you EOCCS. Now, I know I need to say a bit more about it because of the lack of awareness of it, but also to share the lessons we've learned that we can direct to providers of online management education. And we want to and do share with those organisations, and the lessons we've learned as an accrediting body. The lessons we've learned, as Tom echoed, what we do, listen to our members, we listen to our accredited institutions, and we reflect that back in our standards, in the way in which the standards are written. They're pretty robust to start with, but the way in which we reflect the changes that there are. This seems to be on automatic fast forward, so I shall try and go at the speed of this. EOCCS as a standard was launched by EFMD in 2016 after quite a bit of deliberation between our membership, who are largely business school members, where we wanted to open up EOCCS not just to business schools, we wanted to open it up to anyone providing online management education. So this is for corporate bodies and this is for public authorities, anyone at all who's providing this. So we're totally agnostic to whether you're coming from a higher education background, what platform you're using, what software you're using, what your business model might be. We're open to all of this. What we're looking at is what is the real sign that this is good quality, and that I'll go into in a bit more detail. So the scheme was designed by our members. I was one of the representatives helping to design the scheme in the first place, and I've stepped up now to actually running the whole project. We do, like all accreditations, although ours is a certification of an online course or a suite of courses, we have a review process, we have an application process, an information gathering process, and a review process. And what I want to share with you today is one of our highlights, is that process from beginning to end can be as short as 12 weeks. We operate completely virtually. We don't come and visit your institution. You're online, therefore we should be able to see the quality of what you're doing online. We will visit you virtually. And in this way, we can actually curtail the whole duration of the process. We're focused on looking at a course or a suite of courses, so not the whole institution, not the whole program, but just courses and the learning experience within those courses. So far, we have 95 courses certified after 2.5 years of operation, 19 institutions, and in 2019, we're looking forward to having our first, as our certifications run for 3 years, we're looking forward to having our first recertifications and to look at the development there has been in those institutions, in those courses, over that 3-year period. One of the other things that EOCCS means, and it's one of the things that our certified members say is the most valuable for them, is that we want them to join, and we facilitate them joining in a virtual community of practice so that we can share the good practice, share innovation, share ideas amongst that growing community of players. Here's just a quick snapshot of the institutions we've already had certifications for in the last 2.5 years, and you'll see actually one of our biggest is here in India. It's Amity University Online, one of the first to come forward and say, yeah, we'd very much like this certification. Do we fit? My goodness, did they fit? They fit, and I'll explain why with a review later on of our standards, looking at our standards quickly, how an institution that prestigious was able to meet those standards. A lot of speakers over the course of this conference have talked about the online environment, and I just have a few snapshots here. The online environment in the future is unknown. As Daz said earlier, if we knew what the future was going to bring, we wouldn't be academics. We would be doing something different. But amongst those academics, what Simon Nelson shared with us yesterday in his plenary was the fact that the majority of university leaders in a Times Higher Education survey said the future isn't online. They don't want to think the future's online. But my goodness, it is. The online is like a comet coming towards the Earth, and it's going to smash into the Earth, except for those people who can accommodate. And what we're seeing at the moment is the leading edge of that comet. Where EOCCS hopes to do most of its work is in the icy tail of that comet, where the thawing out process may actually take a very long time. But that's the development. We don't really need to, we can't teach the leading edge, the current practitioners very much. They're doing it. They're the practitioners. They're teaching us. But that's what we want to share in our community with everyone else who wants to not just get on board the comet, but actually ride it to their successful goals. So there's a few details there, and we've seen them before from presenters over the course of this conference about the amount of internet penetration worldwide. Obviously that's patchy. There's some areas where it's 95% penetration, like say cities like Singapore, very much online, everything in Singapore, in the US, but in Africa, perhaps down as far as sort of 35% there. And then we're seeing what the online, and we're hearing from speakers as well, what the online community are doing. The stackability of qualifications that Tom referred to, the whole programs online. This is something that Coursera, FutureLearn, edX start with MOOCs, the individual courses that have developed into programs. Does our accreditations, do they fit those criteria? Do they fit what's actually being seen in the marketplace? So the future, I've been asked to talk about the future, and the future has a very big question. what are we accrediting? What are we supposed to be accrediting here? Because if we keep thinking about institutions, business schools, programs, we're in the past. We're not accrediting what's there in the future. We are looking to accredit the learning experience. Within EOCCS, our framework is around the individual learning experience. Is this of a high quality? And it may come from an institution that's already accredited with our EQUIS institution or the AACSB or some rare commodities within the business school world, those Triple Crown, AMBER, AACSB and EFMD accredited bodies. They may come from them, but they may not. They may come from somewhere else, somewhere perhaps without the legacy that those institutions have dragging them back. Hopefully what our accreditation, what our certification does from our accrediting body is helps there to be focus in what's a very confusing marketplace. We hope that our quality symbol, our EOCCS badge, can be a signal to your markets, to your students, to your staff, that here's an institution that's got some of the fundamentals right. Here's a course provider that's got some innovation, but also a very sensible way of looking at the provision of online learning. And, as I said before, reflecting that good practice. The standards, the way in which the reviews are conducted in the future will reflect the developing good standard. What is the good standard? As I say, we don't look at a particular platform, a particular software, particular pedagogic techniques. We say what works in the market, in the context that you have. Sharing, then, what I want to do is share with you some of the success stories that we've seen in our time accrediting. And here's the headlines here. There for business schools, the fact that strategic commitment is needed. I'll have a bit more to say about that. The recognition that change is needed, and that can be very painful sometimes. And the recognition that you have to embrace development, not just ride on its coattails, but embrace it. And for us, within EFMD, new ways of working, looking at the standards, focusing on technology far more, but also new skills for our reviewers, such as engaging in video conferencing, which is not a given. It's not something that you can do readily. People in this room might be well advanced in that, but many, many people, how many video conversations have you had with people and all you can see is the ceiling of their office on their webcam? Or you're looking up their nose. Not a pretty sight in many cases. So I want to start with my big one here, and it really overlaps our other things. But the most successful strategies that institutions we've seen have an absolute strategic commitment to online learning. It's not just something they do on the side. It's not just additional to what they do. It's in their strategy. Whatever their strategy is driven by, whether it's marketing, putting a MOOC out there to be a taster for what's coming, whether it is really truly demand-led, it's responding to what the student base wants, or it's supply-led, taking the more innovative academics and following what they want to do, whether it's online, blended, where you can read the slide just as well as I can. Sometimes that strategic commitment comes with the recognition that actually as an institution we can't do it all ourselves. And what the internet and what online means is we can have a huge variety of partners and inputs that come into the online process. And along the way we see how our successful certified bodies have been able to overcome barriers to implementation and actually find supporters of that and find ways to do that. Well, one of the models that we used early on in trying to talking to traditional universities are the one I'm going to show next. But what this slide is saying is context is also everything. The strategy of one institution won't be mirrored in the strategy of another. Absolutely, context is absolutely everything. And so it just reminded me of a story I saw in the Bangalore Express this morning, where school children in Bangalore this week have been complaining about the cold weather on their way to school. Back in Switzerland, Saturday morning, kids are taking school on the ski slopes. They're not complaining about the cold weather. Everything is context, and what EOCCS looks at is the context of the organisation we're looking at, what it's trying to do, what its strategy is, and then does the online element fit that? Is it of good quality? Does it fit that? So one of the models we looked at quite a time ago, you may be familiar with this. This is the traditional, my way of illustrating the traditional model of university teaching. The institution with academics within it, the academics being absolutely central. They're the sage on the stage, the delivery system, the fount of all knowledge and wisdom. But when we look at the online process, and this may be a simplified version of it, we see academics, well, they're part of that, but there's some very other important parts of that within, and it's not the institution, it's the environment within which they operate. The academics, yes, you still look to them for the knowledge base, for the facilitation. But there's also a whole body of people growing up, learning designers, I'll call them. Those who work at the interface between the knowledge base and the pedagogy and the technology. And then, as we've seen from Anand yesterday, from edX, from Future Learn with Simon Nelson, there's the platform. Now, sometimes institutions decide they'll do that all themselves. Sometimes that's going to be outsourced. Sometimes that's going to be beyond. One example that we've found that actually tried to tackle that was from BI Norwegian Business School in Oslo. And this is an illustration of how they went about it. They recognised, as on this slide, they recognised that actually these were different and very important parts. They promoted, literally, as far as career is concerned, they promoted people with learning design skills, and they saw them as equal to academics. They weren't supporters, admin staff, support staff. They were equal. They were of equal value as the academics. Thank you very much. And the way they did this was to really say, well, initially we've got to change the academic mindset. They did this by a mixture of persuasion and cajoling and bribery, but ultimately got academics to see the value of using their own innovations online. They allowed them to experiment with them and then collected all of these things together to make a whole and to devise their policy. They also thought about needing to develop staff skills, academic skills, facilitator skills, but also we cannot take for granted the digital skills of our millennial students. Yes, they're great on social networking. Yes, they can play games with their thumbs. My thumbs don't do that. But can they learn in a digital environment? Do they learn in a digital environment? We do need to develop those skills. Ultimately, what we're coming to is, within higher education particularly, there will be a cultural change. There are examples already of those. I've been told I've got to be very swift, so I won't go through every example on my review here. But these are some of the things that our cases that we can look at, including that important academic mindset development. And I'll share with you, as almost a final slide, the framework within which EOCCS does its certifications. You can see the 4 elements there. They don't talk about programs, they talk about, and this diagram is actually just lifted from our brochure, which is on our website. We look at those important things. Yes, the institutional commitment, the knowledge base, the course composition, but also, very importantly, the operations, the platform, the course delivery. and the quality assurance. What are we learning from the learning analytics? What are we learning from the increased amount of data we've got on student behaviour? And are we using that to make sure we're of better and better quality? Finally, our own organisation. What have we learned? We've learned that, and as Tom has said, for AACSB, the different emphasis on different elements, but what we've learned for our EQUIS, which is whole institute, the whole school, and our EPAS program level accreditations, is that IT online will be a far more major part of those accreditations in the future than it has been. The focus on it is there. What we've learned through EOCCS is being absorbed into the rest of EFMD. And as I say, the skills of our reviewers as well in understanding that sort of world, asking the right questions and facilitating those things by video conferencing particularly is there. I'll leave as my last slide that sales pitch information. We do have a website, just go for EOCCS. We do have a contact address for the team, eocs@efmdglobal.org, and I'm accompanied here today by Nishit Jain, who many of you may know already, but he's our guy in India and Southeast Asia, who can help you understand how you might benefit from that accreditation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith, for telling us about how EFMD is now handling online courses. I got a couple of quick questions for the speakers, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So Tom, we just heard Keith speak about how EFMD now has a separate certification for online courses. Is AACSB contemplating something similar, or how are you handling this whole online stuff? Because according to Narayan Das, we're all going to be extinct. We don't want AACSB going extinct too.
Yeah, we won't. So we actually looked at this back when we updated the 2013 standards, and we deliberated long and hard about whether we should have a separate set of standards for online programs. And what we concluded was that we shouldn't, that we should apply the same standards to every program, whether it's live, blended, or purely online. So if you look at our business schools today, there are actually very few that have pure traditional live only. There's some digital element to every course. So the sweet spot is actually in the blended programs. So our schools that we accredit the institution as a whole, not the individual programs. So we want to accredit all business learning programs, mainly degree programs, but all business learning programs. And we want to see the same level of engagement with the faculty and the students in an online program or a blended program that we see in a live program. So we actually chose to apply the same standards rather than create a separate set of standards.
And Keith, towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned how your EOCCS standards are now influencing what's happening in the other standards of EFMD. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? For example, IIM Bangalore here is EQUIS accredited. So in the next cycle of EQUIS accreditation, how is your EOCCS approach going to maybe influence how they would look at renewing, say, somebody's EQUIS accreditation?
Okay, well, it is, as I said, the experience that we've gained is being shared with reviewers across all of the EFMD accreditation types. And so for IIM Bangalore with EQUIS, when is your review?
I think they just had a review recently, right?
So in 5 years' time, or say 5 years' time, the likelihood is that the standards may look very much the same. And as Tom said, we take a long time looking at the standards, making sure they're robust, making sure that they're equal between all of the different things we're looking at. But the knowledge that really, the delivery system online and blended is becoming more and more important, then that needs to be there. The question, and let me forecast forward, I can't guarantee this will be the case, but the question, if you don't have online as part of your strategy, can you be an EQUIS school?
Good question.
So that is something I think in 5 years' time, that is a question to prepare for.
Okay, thanks. So I think we have time for a couple of quick questions from the audience. So if any of you have a question, could you please put up your hand and keep the questions as specific as possible, please. Any questions? Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Thank you for your observations. I'm just curious to know, when it comes to accreditation, how do you deal with the bottom 25% of the institutions who have not scored well in the accreditation process? So are they given any feedback or constructive feedback? Because we are always talking about the top performers, but I'm taking a question at the other end of the spectrum.
So I'll start. So it's actually for all schools, it's a continuous improvement review process. And every school, whether they pass the process or they fail the process, gets consultative feedback. So even a school that gets a clean review and says, you guys are in great shape, we'll come back in 5 years, they will still get a letter that says, here's some areas we think you can focus on in the future. Now, obviously, we give even more detailed feedback for those schools that don't make it through the process. The process is so long that typically a school is getting feedback from their mentor on a continuous basis. Once a peer review team chair is named, they're going to get feedback from them on a continuous basis. They're getting feedback throughout the process, but certainly in that final letter, they will get additional consultative feedback no matter what the outcome of the review. I will add, we've had a special project going on called the Global Improvement Network. So we did it with this past year with 4 schools in Africa, where these are schools that aren't currently interested in accreditation, but they want to work on something. Curriculum development, faculty development, and we assign a mentor to them, and we work with them over a 2-year period to help them make improvements to some aspect. As you saw from the data, you know, the college-age population in Africa is going to double in the next couple of decades, so there's a huge need for infrastructure there. So we're also working on non-accreditation products that help that continuous improvement process.
Keith, would you like to add something?
Yeah, what Tom said. It is the same sort of process. It's a developmental process. But can I sort of point you towards EOCCS? I said we've got 19 institutions, but there have been a lot in the pipeline. And what we do is we liaise with institutions before the application stage, and that 12-week period of application to certification and review is one that is preceded by, if your application, if your presentation isn't quite there, then we will help you get it there. We will tell you what you need to do, and you may need to go away for a few months or even a year or develop. I'll give you one example. A major university, I won't name them, but a major university in Russia, they were initially told, actually, no, you're not quite there. Some of the elements of your online delivery aren't quite there. They went away for a year with our mentors to help them. We re-reviewed them after a year, and that development was obvious. That development, that investment, that commitment was seen. And so in our recertification, we will be looking, as Tom said, even those with a clean certification, they will have some development areas there. Perhaps, well, in the particular case, it's about the actual design of their portal. So these are things that we will be looking at in the recertification in 3 years' time. What have they done there? How have they reflected what's happening? How have they reflected the new technologies that will almost certainly be available in that time? So it's a continuous process. Thank you very much for the question.
Can we take a last question?
Hi, I'm Chaitanya, and my question is related to portable learning profiles. So is there any standardization work happening about that, that Tom mentioned about?
So not in terms of the portable learning profile. So the closest we have today of a cumulative transcript is LinkedIn. I've certainly, in talking with business schools, been encouraging them to think about creating a transcript that just doesn't end when the degree is offered and they put the stamp on there, but continuing a lifelong learning transcript. We are certainly, though, within the industry, EFMD, AMBA, ourselves, and GMAC are working together for sort of standard data definitions, so that when we're all collecting data from your schools, we're all asking for the same things and we're calling them the same things. We need to transport that over to business schools as well to ultimately get to some sort of transcript that could be created, compiling everything you've learned from your business as well as different business schools.
Yeah, so just, in India, we've started a big program of getting transcripts digitalized. So now we are looking at depositories and we are looking at storing transcripts there. So somewhere this perhaps should also get integrated with what you're speaking about. Okay, absolutely the last question. Yes, please.
This is to Tom as well as to Kate. In India, we have more than 40,000 plus institutions and more than 950 universities. What I can see, because I keep interacting with your colleagues from a long time, almost from last 8-9 years, and the kind of numbers you are able to create, especially I'm talking about the Indian market, whether it comes to AACSB, I think hardly we have 8 to 9
Less than 10
institutions.
both, less than 10 in both.
Yeah, less than 10. And even if you see the EFMD, that is also less than that. So how we can able to reach the large institutions in India, and what is your plans, especially for Indian market?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've been accrediting schools in North America for 102 years. We've actually only been in India since 2012. The first accredited schools were in 2012, and they sort of started their accreditation journey in the late 2000s. So we're early on. We currently have 9 schools accredited in India. We have another 17 that are currently in process. 4 were accredited last year. So I think we're seeing some momentum here. There certainly are. If you look globally, there are more business schools in India than any other country. 3 times the number that are in China or Indonesia. It's a huge number, so it's a huge market. Accreditation, whether it's AMBA or EFMD or ACSB, we're all a little different. I think the school has to look at what it is they're trying to achieve, what's their mission and vision, and does an international accreditation fit into that, or is national accreditation appropriate? But we offer much more than that. So just simply becoming a membership in any organization, regional or global, of other business schools, sharing ideas, sharing faculty, exchanging students, all of those have a great value proposition. Accreditation is the one that's the most time consuming and the most expensive. And I think it's something the school has to think long and hard about before they embark on that journey. But there are a lot of benefits to be had from networking before you think about an accreditation journey.
Keith?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd endorse everything Tom says there, but in direct answer, that's one of the reasons I'm here today. We do know we have a big job in raising awareness of what we do. I mean, just the show of hands in the auditorium today showed that very few people were actually aware that there was even a standard for online education that did have a global footprint. We are small, we are growing, and I think it's that awareness and sharing that's going to help us be there. But as Tom said, it is not for everybody. IIM Bangalore is an EQUIS school. They may see, actually, we don't need this. We've already got everything we do is covered by EQUIS as a business school. Fine, but what if you want to promote your online credentials? Then EOCCS might well be relevant to you as an EQUIS school. If you want to promote your online credentials and you're not a traditional business school or even EFMD member, so can't reach EQUIS, the EOCCS certification is there for you as well. So we do know it's a big job reaching out to a very big market, and we are relatively much smaller organisation than AACSB, but what we like to say is small but of great quality.
So let's give a big hand to both our presenters. So I certainly learned quite a lot from today's session, and I must confess, Keith, that even though I've been in this business education space for several years and I've met our friend Nishit several times, I didn't know about EOCCS. So certainly that's something I learned about today. So thank you very much, and thanks to the audience as well.